Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined by my trusted colleague, Wes Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to preview Green Bay's Week 5 matchup, Wes. It will be out in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium against the Rams. It is a 3:25 p.m. Central Time kickoff. And we'll take a look at the Rams here. It's a team that a lot of people thought they'd be a playoff contender, and they certainly can get back to that. But they are off to a rough start, 1-3, a win over San Francisco, but losses to the Lions, Cardinals, and Bears.
Oh, my.
And the story really has been the injuries for the Los Angeles Rams. They are banged up on the offensive line. They are banged up in their receiving core with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua both out. And it's just been a struggle for them to score enough points on a consistent basis.
It's a weird kind of matchup in that you have a team at the Packers that are leading the league right now in explosive plays. And when you look at where the Rams have come up short so far, in addition to the injury category, it is kind of the explosive plays. I don't know exactly where it fits for them, but their longest carry of the season so far, 14 yards, was actually last week against the Chicago Bears. They don't have a reception, I think, above maybe 63. It has been hard trudging for this offense to go down the field. Matthew Stafford through 4 games, only 2 touchdowns, has been sacked 13 times. It just kind of gives you an idea of just kind of the gradient that they've been sort of fighting against here in the early part of the season. Everybody understood to a certain extent this was going to be a transition year for them. Big changes on the defensive side of the ball. Aaron Donald no longer there. Your future Hall of Famer, first ballot, unanimous Hall of Famer. He's gone from the heart of that defense. They're still trying to figure out their identity, and offensively, Matt LaFleur said it. I mean, Matthew Stafford is as good as they come in the NFL, but when you need a certain amount of weapons around him, and it just seems like outside of maybe Tutu Atwell, they just haven't been able to find that next guy up in the wake of these injuries to Kupp and Nacua.
Yeah, I think it's paramount for the Packers, though, not to sleep on these guys, because you do have Matthew Stafford back there. He is starting to figure some things out with Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson being his top 2 receivers, with those other, Pro Bowl level guys out of the mix right now. And I thought the Rams were kind of starting to figure something out offensively last week. They seemed to move the ball pretty well against the Bears, but they just kept getting bogged down and kicking field goals, and the field goals weren't enough to chalk up a victory there. So, as you mentioned, Stafford just has 2 touchdown passes, but he also only has 2 interceptions this year. It's not like he's turning the ball over or anything like that. Kyren Williams, their running back, he's got 5 rushing touchdowns already this year, which is a number that catches your eye, but he's also only averaging 3.5 yards per carry as the number 1 running back in this offense. So the Packers need, this is a unit, as you said, it's trying to figure some things out. And the Packers kind of have to keep this unit down and not let them figure too much out here coming up. They're going to be back at home. I think there's going to be a fair amount of Packer fans at SoFi Stadium. The Rams deal with this all the time, where visiting fans just invade their place because they don't really have a Los Angeles fan base of the size that you would think in a market like that. But they are back at home. They're on their home turf, and sometimes when teams get desperate in the NFL, that's when they play their best.
And Matthew Stafford is a portrait of that.
Yes.
Whether the Detroit Lions were struggling or not, Matthew Stafford was always a tough out for the Green Bay Packers whenever those 2 teams met. The challenging part, though, and the reason why I think there's such a huge emphasis on why Green Bay needs to start fast and play clean football, is because of a stat you pushed out there earlier in the week. I mean, the fact that the Rams through 4 games have 19 points in the first half, have been outscored almost by triple in that time.
Yeah, 58-19 is the cumulative first half score through the first 4 games for the Rams. That's just a mind-boggling number.
Yeah, so that actually is. That is more than they've been more than
tripled
at this point in the first half. I mean, and we saw last week with the Packers and the Vikings, when you're playing from that far behind, it is not easy to claw yourself back into these things. And the danger that was omnipresent with Cooper Kupp, and the Packers have seen him time and time again. They saw Puka Nacua and just how he can change a game. They've had to sort of piece things together a little bit more. There's still guys in that offense with Parkinson and also with Atwell. There are guys that you have to be really cognizant of and not allow them to beat you. You have to take them very serious. But the Green Bay Packers, what they've put on film offensively here through the first month of the season, whether Jordan Love is in the lineup or not, you have to feel good about Green Bay's chances, but you also have to earn those chances against an opponent like this on the road.
Yeah, you mentioned defensively the Rams. Aaron Donald not there anymore. He is retired. They're a much younger group up front. They rank last in the league right now in rushing defense. They're giving up 165 yards a game on the ground. And I'm not saying necessarily that you take the Packers' game plan for the Colts game when Malik Willis was first stepping in and, you line up to pound the ball down somebody's throat.
Right.
But honestly, Wes, you have to get after these guys on the ground. You have to take that even if it's not going to be 50-some carries, you have to take the mentality running the ball that the Packers had against the Colts when they knew it's what they were going to do. They knew it's what they had to do. You have to bring that mentality into this game because if you can run the ball against the Rams the way most teams so far this year have run the ball against the Rams, and you have Jordan Love at quarterback, you ought to be able to have a good day on offense.
100%. And for the Packers, they've been doing this thing where it's kind of almost this one-for-one Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson, both of them kind of getting serious, trying to make things a little bit lighter on Jacobs. But this is, to me, the type of game where you really unleash him. If everything's good with the back, if he's feeling good, after a pretty heavy workload the first month of the season, this game is tailor-made for him to be able to come out and play well. And then the other aspect of it, you mentioned the run defense. They only have 3 takeaways so far this season, 1 interception so far this season. They've just been struggling to find plays. They don't have an inundation of sacks so far this year. So if you come out and kind of wear them down early on with a guy like Jacobs, it opens up everything. And fortunately, it sounds like the Packers dodged a bullet with the Christian Watson scenario with his ankle. Seems to be moving around okay, which, considering for a second there, I thought maybe he broke the darn thing.
Yeah.
It's perfect the way it all
look good, especially when he gets carted off to the locker room and he doesn't, make his own way up the tunnel.
100%. So even if you don't have him, though, still on Sunday, with guys like Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, the way that he's come out of the gate so far this season, I just want to see that. Basically what I'm saying is I just want to see the Packers run their offense. They put up a lot of yards last week. They put up a lot of points. They made a lot of errors. They had some penalties, especially in the first quarter. But one of the things they did so well in those wins over the Colts and the Titans is they ran what they wanted to run. It's going to look different with Jordan Love under center.
Yeah.
But they had a game plan. They executed it. That's where Green Bay needs to get back to, and that's by staying ahead of the sticks. That's by protecting the football. And yes, to the original point, that is by running the ball down the opponent's gullet.
Yeah. I mean, you said it. It's about bringing a game plan into a game and being able to execute that game plan. And the best way to be able to execute your game plan and be able to stick with it throughout the game is to get off to a good start. That's not to say that you have to jump on somebody 10-0 or 14-0. We saw even in the Titans game, Packers got a touchdown, Titans responded with a touchdown. It was 7-7, right? But you can't have what happened against the Minnesota Vikings where essentially you can take about 2/3 of the game plan, like tear it off and throw it in the garbage at halftime because you're down by so much. You've got no way to dig into that well. Keep the call sheet full. Get off to a strong start against these guys. They haven't started well, and you said it too, Wes. They haven't taken the ball away. 3 takeaways, 1 interception, 2 fumble recoveries on the season. The Packers are essentially averaging like 3 takeaways a game. These guys only have 3 takeaways on the entire season. So don't let them, suddenly break their profile and get something going in that category when that's a category that coming into this game, you absolutely should win it.
Yeah, and the other aspect too, I mean, the Packers pass rush, for all the issues we've talked about and the fact that it hasn't been as prolific as I think everybody thinks it was going to be, they still have more sacks in that game against the Titans than the Rams have all season. I mean, the Rams only have 7 sacks so far this year. So, listen, at some point, Sean McVay, and obviously as we talked about with Michael Flores, his offensive coordinator, they have some really smart people in that organization. They are a lot like the Packers, a team that works its way up through the course of the year and peaks when they get into December. But still, the stats are what they are right now. The Packers have to be, if the Packers want to be the winning team that I think you and I both feel they can be, they have that potential there. This is the opponent where you need to impose your will. It was my big line in Insider Inbox. I just feel like You can't take them for granted, but you also have to be who you think you are to be able to come out in this one.
Yeah, you have to be able to command things. I'll take care of our sponsor business here, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. We touched on a number of things already. So when it comes to the keys to victory in this game, which one of all these various topics that we have hit on rises to the top?
For me, it comes down to explosive plays to turnovers ratio. Packers had a ton of explosive plays last week, but they had too many turnovers. You can't have 4 turnovers and expect to win the game.
Right.
Even if your defense gives you another trio of them, you can't expect that. You have to be able to convert in those opportunities. But the other aspect of it is the Green Bay Packers are actually finally playing a team, somewhat due to injury, that is about as young as they are. The Rams went many years without draft picks. If you look at the construct of their defense, it's made up now of a lot of day 2 and day 3 picks that have all pretty much been within the last 3 years. As those guys gain more experience, they're going to become bigger difference makers. Green Bay has to make sure that doesn't start in week 5. And I feel like if you can come out and really set the tone, Mike, I said it last week. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I said in that game against the Vikings, those first 15 minutes are going to be critical. The Vikings dominated those first 15 minutes in every way a team could dominate them.
Yep.
And you saw what the domino effect was at the rest of the game. In some ways, fast starts are always important, but I feel like this is another game that really encapsulates that, because if the Rams get feeling themselves a little bit, they're playing in their own venue. They've been in some knockdown, drag-out games other than what happened against the Cardinals. I mean, this is a team that has been in everything basically since the beginning of the season.
Yep.
If they have that type of confidence and that type of swagger, that's where I get concerned. So for the Green Bay Packers, it's about running your offense, protecting the football, and still managing to develop those big plays that have really been the hallmark of this team to this point of the season.
Yeah, I think it's among those things we talked about. It's about getting off to a strong start, which is what the Packers did against the Colts and against the Titans when they didn't have Jordan Love at quarterback. So get off to a fast start when you do have Jordan Love at quarterback. The Packers blew their chance essentially for a really fast start against the Eagles in Brazil because they couldn't execute in the red zone to punch things in and ended up kicking field goals instead. So give Jordan Love a strong start and then see where this game goes. And then I think the other things that are top of mind for me are to run the football. This is a struggling run defense. And as much as, the Packers have plenty of weapons, even with Christian Watson out for the time being, get that, really establish the 1-2 punch with Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson and get after that. And then on the other side, just keep the Rams kicking field goals. Matthew Stafford is going to move the ball. He is savvy. He is crafty. He is going to find ways to move the chains. But this offense is struggling to get touchdowns and they're kicking field goals, and you have to keep it that way because Sean McVay and Mike LaFleur are going to come up, if they're struggling in the red zone, they're going to come up with some creative ways to change that. And the Packers have to stay on their toes and keep these guys kicking field goals when they get in close.
Yeah, and you look at this, I was just taking one more glance at this. I knew that the Rams were 31st in total defense right now, as you pointed out how they're struggling against the run. They also are right now second to last, only to Carolina in points allowed, scoring defense, 28.8 points per game. Third down defense, 50%. Red zone, 23rd, tied for 23rd. So I mean,
it's interesting because it felt like, and I know they've had injuries on offense since week 1.
Yeah.
But in that week 1 primetime, Detroit, the Lions hosting Matthew Stafford again, a rematch of that playoff game from last year. And I thought the Rams defense played a pretty darn good game. And then, the point total rises a little because of the overtime touchdown. But, in regulation, they only gave up like 20 points or whatever it was to the Lions. I thought, okay, the Rams don't have Aaron Donald, but they'll probably be okay defensively. But since week 1, that defense has really, really struggled.
And then Marvin Harrison Jr. showed up.
Yeah, that too. But they didn't play very good defense against the Bears last week, which was a team that really had been struggling offensively with the rookie quarterback and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't put on a good defensive performance in Chicago, which surprised me.
Green Bay's going to go through a stretch here, and again, you can't look ahead to any of these opponents. Obviously, there's a challenge that is present with all of them, but there's going to be some games here, Michael, where they're going to be favored. I mean, Jacksonville could win the next 2 games, and Green Bay's still going to be favored going down there at the end of this month. I mean, and that's, I think, one of the main messages I would have if I was Matt LaFleur this week. You can play with any team in the league. You almost came back and beat a 4-0 Minnesota Vikings team that plays pretty all-around good football. We saw how things went with Philadelphia down in Brazil. For as much as went wrong, the fact that they were still in that thing, and then certainly, despite not having Jordan Love, were able to execute and facilitate those wins against the non-conference slate. And that's what they have to do once again. You can't lose to teams that are struggling. I won't call them bad teams, but the teams that are struggling. And the Rams, for everything they've done and for how close they've been, they also are one eyelash away from being 0-4 at this point. Mm-hmm. So Packers have to prove that they're a team that is better than their 2-2 record right now suggests.
Yeah, well, looking elsewhere around the league in Week 5, bye weeks have arrived. The Detroit Lions got the early bye. They are off in Week 5 after their 3-1 start. That's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out over the course of the season with as power-packed as the NFC North appears to be right now. The fact that after this week, the Lions are going to have to play 13 consecutive games without a break with having this really early bye. So something to keep an eye on as the season unfolds for the Lions. London football is also back. The New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers returns to the site of the broken thumb at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The Jets against the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
Minnesota taking its 4-0 record to London. And
let's go, Aaron.
And if I'm reading the clocks right, I think we wake up in our hotel rooms in LA on Sunday morning, and this London game starts at 6:30.
Right? 6:30 in the morning.
A.M.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyway,
I don't know if I'll be up yet.
Throwing that, I'm not sure if I'll be. Maybe I'll catch the second half, but yeah, London football is back, and the NFC North leaders are going across the pond this week.
I get a big kick out of this, man, because the more and more this season has played out, I knew this a little bit at the beginning, but to me, it feels like the schedule makers just started with the Jets and then just figured out everything after that. Okay, so we want to have Aaron in the opener. We want to have him down in London. We're going to get him on a primetime game in the first month of the season. It's just funny how those things work out. But obviously, that's a huge game, not only for the Packers, would love nothing more than to see old QB1 come through and knock off his old NFC North rival, but if you followed all the dialogue, the discourse, and the narratives coming out of that last game for the Jets, this is a pivotal point that they're reaching as well.
Yeah, that was a stinker of a loss for them last week. There's no two ways about it. Bo Nix throws for 60 yards, and the Jets lose 10-9 on a missed field goal, 50-some yard or whatever, missed field goal at the horn. Just an absolute stinker of a loss for the Jets, and they got to bounce back quickly.
They found something out, though, didn't they, about Braylon Allen? It seems like that worm is beginning to turn as far as how that backfield is constructed, and with him and Breece Hall.
Yeah.
And I'll be curious to see where that takes them. But yeah, the Jets, they're obviously looking for a response there, and it's a tough opponent to try to get a response. Very, very, very intrigued to watch, if I can get a chance to catch it, Aaron Rodgers and what he does with that Brian Flores defense that we saw last week.
Yes.
Aaron is the master in terms of picking those locks, and Flores is going to throw the entire gamut at him, I would imagine.
For all of Minnesota's confusion and disguise and everything else, if there's a quarterback out there who can decipher it at the line of scrimmage,
that's the one.
Figure out what the Vikings are doing while they're trying to confuse you on every snap. Aaron Rodgers is the guy who just might be able to do that. Any other games on the Week 5 slate that jump out to you?
Bills and Texans is huge. Josh Allen, I think, is playing like an MVP through the first month of the season. I think he's been the player that organization has needed him to be amidst all their changes that they made.
Yeah, he just needs his offensive coordinator to not call a trick play when right when you're on the verge of basically being in command and pulling off a comeback. You call a trick play that goes into disaster territory. And anyway,
yeah,
I digress.
No, but it's true. I mean, and then also you got that matchup with like the Cardinals and the 49ers, two teams that are still trying to keep their heads above water. And then, I'll just mention this because Monday Night Football is New Orleans and Kansas City. I think from the initial reports I saw, I don't think Rashee Rice is in the cards, but man, have you seen more instances now where something happens on the field and it looks like, gosh, that guy's season is over? And now it kind of sounds like maybe it wasn't an ACL for him, although they've been really tight-lipped about it to this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously the Christian Watson thing here, the Jordan Love thing, it's funny how that game is played sometimes, and the times where a guy can have a really nasty-looking contact injury, and then it's some non-contact thing that knocks somebody out.
Yeah.
It's bizarre how that works.
Yeah, it just goes to show, like, there's no need to try to draw any conclusions about somebody's injury just based on a replay and what things look like. And I mean, it's all about what the MRIs and the scans and images and all that stuff they do. It's what they get from that. So, I mean, hopefully for Rashee Rice's sake, it's not an ACL, and maybe he has a chance to come back this year. The Chiefs are gonna try to stay undefeated against a Saints team that started out awfully strong.
Salty.
And now all of a sudden, their narrative turned a little bit. So
the Carolina Panthers heading into Soldier Field.
Right?
Yep. See if they can do anything.
Andy Dalton,
former Bears great.
Yes.
Bears legend, Andy Dalton.
It's the former Bears quarterback, Andy Dalton, going back into Chicago. That game's going to be more interesting than people think.
It will be. Yeah. Again, as I always say, you and I won't see it.
And with that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team and all of our coverage from Sunday's game at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. We will be there and have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.